But she had 2 kids.
That's all I know.
Yeah, okay. But
Well, the Brown girls, you see, what would I have been? I was 12 years old when Mrs. Daly died. I vaguely remember the Brown girls coming out there and meeting them, but they were older.
That was Margaret and Carolyn.
And okay, Margaret and Carolyn.
But
yeah.
you did meet them out.
Oh,
at the mansion.
yeah.
What do you remember of them?
Well, that they went horseback riding with us. There was a routine there, John. You got up in the morning and you dressed in your riding habit. You went down and you had breakfast in the children's dining room. Then you walked down to the stables where Ed Weatherall had the horses ready with the English saddles and everything. And then you went out riding. And then you came back and you watched your parents play tennis on the tennis court, or whoever was playing tennis. And then you got to go swimming in the swimming pool. And all we wanted to do was go swimming. And then you'd go have lunch and so forth.
Where were the horses kept?
Down in the stables.
Just right there.
And does Besnier still own the stables?
Yes.
Unless he sold them.
I think so. The stables right by the mansion?
No, they're down, oh God, maybe a mile. Beautiful brick stable. As you look at the stable from the mansion, on the right-hand side, they had a huge carriage house, and it was full of these beautiful carriages, lacquered with fancy upholstery and all this stuff, and they were covered with, made for the carriage canvas covers. Then in the center were all the stalls for the horses, and they had a cork floor. And then over on the other side, it's a U shape. Mrs. Daly had her cars there, and she of course had a chauffeur, Guy Hill, and he had a little house up the road towards the mansion. And Margaret Zigray didn't live in the mansion. She lived in Guy Hill's house and ran her horses all over the place. She had, I don't know whether they're Hungarian, but she had horses and ran them all over the place. And anyway, then up above, there was a second floor. They stored oats and hay up there. And of course they had beautiful horses still. And we'd go out and we'd ride all over the stock farm. But you had to go riding every morning. I mean every morning.
Did you always have the same horse?
Not always, no.
Well, when did you first meet Margaret, the Countess?
She was a friend of Tom Murray's, and she used to come to Moose Lake with Tom Murray, and I got to know her.
That was after the war, right?
And then in 1960, she invited all of us down to Riverside. And the reason I remember is because my sister was pregnant. And that's when I couldn't believe the rack and ruin in the mansion. She took us a tour of the mansion, John. It was just a mess. It's reeked of mold. The roof was leaking. Well, you remember what it was like, maybe
in the 60s.
When, but I don't know. Tom Murray knew Margaret pretty well, and so I'd meet Margaret at Moose Lake or at the Murrays, but she lived in Pennsylvania, didn't she, or some damn thing?
Maryland, maybe.
And the last time I saw her was in 1960, when she invited all of us down there.
What was the occasion?
She just invited us all down. And you shouldn't be talking to a guy who's as befuddled as I am. I can't remember. when she married Bessigny, and I can't remember when Bessigny died, and I think 60, when did Margaret die? But anyway, and you were in the legislature, weren't you, when they passed the bill to allow them to buy the...
Right.
I still think the state got the worst. They got the mansion, a non-income producing piece of property, and Bessigny got the stock farm and the stables and everything that was worthwhile.
Well, did you ever say anything to Margaret about the upkeep of the place? Your
Oh,
impression?
yeah.
What, tell about that.
Well, I tried to be very delicate, but I was so shocked. John, I never wanted to go back. I was, it's like, I don't know, it's a place that you've loved like that, and see the mansion with the plaster falling and all of that, and I very delicately said to Margaret, Margaret, at least, you shouldn't let the mansion go, you should fix the roof at least. And then she turned to me and said, "You're typical of you Americans." She really looked down on Americans, I think. "You spend your childhood being stuffed full of illusions, and your adult life being disillusioned." Well, if seeing a place you loved going to rack and ruin is disillusionment, I don't know, but as I say, after I got into finding out about the Zigray family, I know what she meant, because after World War I, the local communists took over their estate, and then in World War II, Count Zigray was put in a prison camp in Hungary and then in Austria, and that must have been pretty tough on them.
You never met Harriet, though?
No.
Did you ever hear anything about her, or?
No.
And Margaret was their only child?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay. And then, do you remember anything else about the mansion? What about when they would measure who measured the height of the kids as they were growing up on the wall?
Well, I know that Marcus III is on that, and of course his mother was a Viennese woman, beautiful, I guess, and his dad, Marcus II, was dead. He was dead before I never met Marcus II. Spent quite a bit of time with Marcus III.
But your height is measured on the wall up there at the mansion?
Yeah, well, on the closet.
On the closet? So
I've got a picture of that.
So what was that all about? Who did that? And
I don't
what
know.
Do you remember? Do you remember it at all?
I remember they'd call us, Lynn Murray, Tommy Taylor, George Bennett, Alice Bennett, and Marcus III were all on that door. And I think it was our parents, or I don't know whose idea it was. I really don't know. It was just a tradition, and they'd started it when I was so young, and I can't even remember, I guess.
So you were one of the kids that they'd measured?
Well, we were all down there, we were all friends, and John, and to be frank with you, I wish to hell I had had a chance to sit down and tape my mother's recollections, because I've got pictures of Riverside way back when, and the Daly Mansion is now configured. That was Marcus Daly died in 1900, and I think the mansion as it's now configured wasn't there until 1916, was it?
Right. Well,
And so here are these pictures of the Daly home that don't even look like the mansion now, and then pictures of people riding horses and the stables and all that you wouldn't even recognize.
Well, when did your mom start going there?
When she was a little girl.
So did your grandmother go there?
Oh, God, yes. I've got, you must have seen the guest book, haven't you?
I've seen the guest book, yes.
Okay, well, you can see when the Murray started going, and
Oh, okay.
when Catherine Murray started going, and
Okay.
when the Brown girls were there,
All right.
and a lot of the people from Butte.
So you have photographs of those times when your grandmother and mother were there.
Yeah, and the hell of it is, John, I don't know what they are. I know I've got a picture with all people lined up, and I know what Mrs. Daly looked like when she was young, but I don't know who and then my grandfather, Dr. Murray's in that with one of those Mexican hats on. Jesus. And, but as I say, I wish to hell I'd sat down with my mother and had her tell me about it.
Well, I noticed in the visitors register that Childs were always going down there from Helena, Mr. and
No,
Mrs. Childs.
no, I don't know whether that's the child. Harry Child started the Yellowstone Park Company and made a fortune, and he had a home here. Now, whether that's the same Child family, I don't know.
Did they donate the Camp Child? Were they the ones?
Yes.
Well, I noticed that there's Childs there a lot, and I didn't know why there would be or who they would be, but they were from Helena.
I assume that's the Child family.
Yeah. Was there anybody else in that extended network of friends?
Oh, yeah.
John D. Ryan, of course.
John D. Ryan is there. Les Sheridan was there. Charlie Bovey came down and wanted to buy some of the carriages. Down in the Bitterroot, there's a Gologly Hot Springs. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
There was a Wes Gologly who was a Michigan law graduate. And what the connection with the Gologly Hot Springs was, I don't know. He used to come down there a lot. A good friend of my mother's. They used to do a lot of fish. Les Sheridan and Wes Gologly and my mother. My mother loved to fly fish. She was the women's unweighted champion fly caster in Montana for years.
Wow. They
They used to fish the Bitterroot River a lot, and it must have been good fishing.